Good afternoon. Welcome to Assembly Revenue. Will Madam Secretary please take the roll?
Assemblywoman Anderson. Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod.
Here.
Assemblywoman Considine. Assemblyman Hafen.
Here.
Assemblywoman Kasama.
Here.
Assemblyman Miller.
Here.
Assemblyman O'Neill. Assemblyman Ortlicker.
Here.
Assemblyman Roberts.
Here.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Here.
Chair Cohen.
And I am here. Thank you. Please mark Assemblyman O'Neill absent, excused. Again, good afternoon. Welcome to the Assembly Revenue meeting. Some housekeeping before we begin. We are all getting used to the change and different screens, that type of thing. However, several of us still have multiple screens to review exhibits, that type of bills, so please don't consider that a sign of disrespect or inattention if you see us looking on our screens or looking at hard copies of documents, that type of thing. Members and presenters, although our presenters aren't with us, anyone in the audience, please silence your electronic devices. Courtesy and respect is always expected and required in our committee. Additionally, courtesy and respect when working with our staff before or after the meeting is required. Committee member, as a reminder, and as stated on our agenda, we will have public comment which will occur at the end of the meeting and may be limited in duration depending on the time. Details on how to participate during public comment are available on Nellis, which you can get to on the legislature's website. People wishing to provide testimony or attend the meeting virtually or in person must pre-register online, which you can also get to on the legislature's website. Registration opens when an agenda is posted on the website. As a reminder and pursuant to rule number 54 of the Assembly Standing Rules, if you testify in support of a bill or a resolution, that is construed as approval of the measure as written or approval of the measure as written along with the proposed amendments that have been approved by the sponsor of the measure. Opposition to the bill or resolution is construed as not supporting the measure as written or opposing the measure as revised by an amendment that has not been approved by the sponsor of the measure. A neutral position on a bill is one in which the person testifying offers no particular insights on the measure, support, or opposition, however, expresses they're just providing information. So they're providing information without taking a position. So therefore, if you love a bill, but you have a small change that you want to make and it has not been accepted by the bill sponsor, that is opposition, but please feel free to let us know that you still love the bill. With that, we are going to move on to our bill presentations. We're going to begin with Senate Bill 25, which revises provisions governing the determination of whether food for human consumption is subject to sales and use taxes. And with us is Director Melanie Young from the Department of Taxation. Sorry, getting used to doing this with my mask on. Welcome, Director, and please feel free to begin when you're ready and to introduce your staff who will be providing testimony with you.
Thank you, Chair Cohen, and members of the Assembly Revenue Committee. For the record, my name is Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. With me here today, I have Chief Deputy Shelley Hughes and Deputy Director Terry Upton. We are here to present SB 25, which revises the provisions governing the determination of whether food for human consumption is subject to sales and use tax. The Department of Taxation is requesting to repeal language in the statute that is no longer relevant since the department joined the streamlined sales tax. At this time, what I would like to do is turn the time over to Chief Deputy Shelley Hughes. She has a presentation and she will go through the provisions of the bill. Thank you.
Please go ahead, Ms. Hughes.
Good afternoon, Chair Cohen and committee members. My name is Shelley Hughes, Chief Deputy for the Department of Taxation. Just one moment here. I am here today to introduce SB 25. SB 25 repeals NRS 372-2841 and 374-2891. Currently, NRS 360B-110 requires the Nevada Tax Commission to enter into the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Agreement and to take any other actions reasonably required to implement the provisions of the agreement and adopt necessary regulations. Additionally, NRS 372-284 and the identical provision found in NRS 374-289 exempts food for human consumption from sales and use tax. However, excluded from this exemption is prepared food intended for immediate consumption. In other words, prepared food intended for immediate consumption is subject to sales and use tax. Lastly, NRS 360B-460 defines prepared food and is consistent with the definition in the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Agreement. The department has also adopted NAC 372-605, consistent with the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Agreement, that provides guidance on how to determine when food is considered prepared food and thus subject to tax. This bill repeals NRS 372-2841 and the identical provision in NRS 374-2891, and thereby eliminates the language that directs the department not to look at the type of establishment where the food is sold when determining the taxability of the food sold. NRS 372-284 and NRS 374-289 would remain in place to provide that prepared food for immediate consumption is taxable. And NRS 360B-640 will remain in place to provide the definition of prepared food and continue to provide guidance as to what food is subject to tax. This bill would become effective upon passage and approval. To provide some background, Nevada became a full member to the governing board of the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Agreement on April 1st, 2008. The purpose of the agreement is to simplify and modernize sales and use tax administration in order to substantially reduce the burden of tax compliance. This includes having uniformity and consistency in sales and use tax laws among the states. There are 23 states that are full member states, and they have adopted the measures in the agreement. Sales and use tax provisions relating to the taxability of food are set forth in the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Agreement. Nevada follows these provisions, and as mentioned previously, they are included in NRS 372-284, NRS 374-289, and NRS 360B-460. The department has also adopted regulation NAC 372-605 based on the Streamlined Governing Board issue papers and interpretations. The department's most recently adopted regulation, LCB file number R056-18, is based on Streamline's interpretation number 2006-04, dated April 18th, 2006. The department would like to repeal NRS 372-2841 and NRS 374-2891 because these statutes predate our adoption of the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Agreement and no longer applicable in our determination as to whether food is intended for immediate consumption, because we now follow provisions that are found in the agreement. Consequently, these statutes are no longer relevant. Furthermore, no other Streamlined member state has statutes with language found in NRS 372-2841 and NRS 374-2891. In addition to these statutes being no longer applicable, leaving these statutes in the NRS leads to confusion in the industry because we cannot provide guidance on our website and our publications or in our industry trainings to specific establishments as to when the establishment food sales are taxable. NRS 372-2841 and NRS 374-2891 prevent us from referring to the type of establishment when discussing what type of food is taxable. We have researched other states, both members and non-members of Streamline, who provide guidance by establishment as to when food is subject to tax. Arkansas has a food guide and lists examples of common food items purchased at your local grocery store that are subject to the state sales and use tax. Additionally, this guide provides examples of when sales tax applies to common food transactions at grocery stores, convenience stores, concession stands, and fast food restaurants. Indiana has a sales tax information bulletin that indicates a number of items sold by grocery stores, supermarkets, and similar type businesses that are classified as non-taxable food items and taxable food items. Maine, while not a member state, has a publication that includes a quick answer chart that lists the types of retailer and what items that retailer sells that are subject to tax. Washington has a publication for restaurants and bars that indicates which food sales are generally subject to tax. Wisconsin provides sales and use tax training for grocers, which includes determining which foods sold at grocery stores are taxable as prepared food for immediate consumption. If NRS 372-2841 and NRS 374-2891 are repealed, the department can provide clarity to establishment on which of the establishment's foods or sales are taxable. Pursuant to NRS 372-284, NRS 374-289, and NRS 360B-460, we would determine when food is prepared food for immediate consumption and therefore taxable, and then replicate other streamlined member states' guidance and training, making Nevada consistent with how other states operate. NRS 372-2841 and NRS 374-2891 were added to the NRS with SB 238 in 1999, and Nevada was not a member of the governing board of the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Agreement at that time. At that time, there was issues on determining when food was subject to tax. For example, restaurants served food for immediate consumption, so restaurants were being taxed on their sales of food. However, grocery stores were not being taxed on their sales of food because food purchased from grocery stores were taken home to prepare and serve at a later time. In the minutes of the Assembly Committee on Taxation dated April 20th, 1999, and the Senate Committee on Taxation dated February 25th, 1999, testimony was provided by a pizza parlor that sold frozen pizzas. The owner came forth to testify that he could not compete with grocery stores because his food sales of frozen pizzas were being taxed, where grocery store sales of frozen pizzas were not. The legislature recognized the unfairness in the tax application, and as a result, the statute was put in place that required the department not to look at the type of establishment to determine the taxability of food, but to look to whether the food was intended for immediate consumption. As mentioned previously, since the enactment of NRS 372-2841 and NRS 374-2891, Nevada has joined the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Governing Board as a member state. Furthermore, the legislature has enacted NRS 360B-460, which defines what is prepared food. This statute contains the requirements as to when food is considered prepared food and thus subject to tax pursuant to NRS 372-284 and NRS 374-259. As a result, NRS 372-2841 and NRS 374-2891 are no longer needed. In summary, we request that both NRS 372-2841 and NRS 374-2891 be repealed because these statutes predate Nevada's adoption of the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Agreement, which requires the department to base the taxability of food on whether the food is intended for immediate consumption and not on the type of establishment where the food is sold. Thank you for your consideration, and with that, I'll turn it back to Director Young.
Thank you, Shelley. Again, Melanie Young for the Department of Taxation for the record, and I appreciate you going through the provisions of the bill. This concludes our presentation and we're available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you both. So before we go to questions from the members, I do have a question. How, if the change is made, will there be any look back on any businesses and having to redo taxes for businesses, anything like that? Or this would just be moving forward, even though we're just clarifying what really already is what we're pretty much doing?
Thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. The Department of Taxation is already operating under the provisions of the Streamlined Sales Tax, so this would not change whether or not we would look back on taxes or taxpayers who have been complying with the bill. To clarify, I would believe that they would still expect it to be in compliance with the agreement as it is today.
Thank you. I have a question from Assemblyman Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I looked in your information packet, and I kind of have the answer, but I just want to confirm. So in 2008, that's when NRS 360B.110 was amended to require that we get into this tax agreement. So if that's ever repealed, we would have to reinstitute these NRSs to clarify that, since it wouldn't be clarified in our agreement.
Thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. What I'd like to do is turn this over to Chief Deputy Shelley Hughes to answer the question.
Yes, this is Chief Deputy Shelley Hughes for the Department of Taxation. Assemblyman Roberts, if we did repeal 360B 460 and we're no longer part of the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Agreement, NRS 372284 and 37228, the identical provision found in 374, would still be in place. And so it still provides that food for human consumption does not include alcoholic beverages, pet foods, tonics, and vitamins, but it does exclude prepared food intended for immediate consumption. So the tax would still be in place for prepared food intended for immediate consumption. I hope that answers your question.
Well, maybe I just didn't catch it because it's all this has too many numbers in it. So what we're repealing, my point is if we repeal these sections because we have the agreement, if we ever repeal the agreement, would we have to put these back into statute? And I guess the answer is no.
Shelley Hughes for the Department of Taxation. Yes, the answer is no. The provisions that we're repealing indicate that we could not look at the type of establishment where the food is sold to determine whether food is for immediate consumption.
All right. Thank you very much.
So hopefully that was clear.
That makes sense for me. Thank you very much. Thank you for the question, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I also have a question from Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just curious on how this might impact, and maybe it doesn't, meal prep services. I know there used to be, I don't know if they're still in existence, there was a company that I know in my district called Dream Dinners, where you would go in and create your meal, but you would then take it. I know there's several subscription type meal delivery services. Are those impacted at all?
Thank you, Melanie, Executive Director. I would like to turn that question over to Terry Upton, the Chief Deputy over Compliance.
Yes, thank you for the question. Terry Upton, Deputy Director for the Department of Taxation. If anything that is prepared by the vendor for immediate consumption would be taxable. If something was prepared by the vendor for the customer to take home and prepare in their home, that would be exempt. Does that answer your question?
I think we still have a question.
So it's better to buy a half-baked pizza than a full-baked pizza?
No, I'm talking about an actual business, a business design where you might go in and create your own meal, but then I guess you would take it home with the tax structure. And I don't know if you're familiar with a lot of these home delivery, but the food is already prepared. I mean, I guess maybe you'd have to heat them up. I'm not sure. I think there's sort of a broad. I'm just trying to understand where that falls. Am I making sense?
Yes. Terry Upton for the Department of Taxation, for the record. If a business were to simply package the food and not heat it, that food would be exempt because part of the statute says that it has to be in a heated state, 2 and more ingredients, sold with utensils. That would not be the case for one of these home delivery type services. That food would be exempt because it's, sent to the home where the customer prepares it for immediate consumption. Any food that was sold in a heated state, such as, a grocery store that you would go in and they have hot food, they have pizza, they have sandwiches, they have soup, that would be taxable if you go in and put the soup in the container, take it up to the grocery store cashier and pay for it there. That would be taxable.
Thank you.
I have a question from Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you. Yes, Assemblywoman Kasama, District 2. So along that line, let's say you're in a grocery store and there's the pre-made packages. There's meatloaf and mashed potatoes. It's all done and you just buy the box and you take that home. So that hasn't been heated. Is that taxable or not?
No, food purchased, again, sorry, Terry Upton for the record. Food purchased in a grocery store is not taxable unless it's sold in a heated state or it's been prepared, such as in the deli.
And follow-up? And the other follow-up question, there's the section on the utensils. So that's completely removed, whether utensils are provided or not?
Terry Upton, Deputy Director for the record. No, that is not removed. That remains the same within the statute. That's part of streamlined sales tax.
So with that, then I happen to notice when I read that it had a lot of definitions, but it didn't have chopsticks. And so, if you pick up sushi that's been prepared and they give you chopsticks, so as long as you don't take the chopsticks, it's not taxable?
Sushi would be taxable because it is prepared. It's sold in some kind of container. It's meant for immediate consumption. It's generally sold with napkins in a container. That would be considered taxable.
It's not heated, so I'm just wondering about the definition.
Well, the statute is food sold in a heated state by the seller, or two and more ingredients mixed together. So it doesn't necessarily always have to be heated. It can just be 2 or more ingredients, such as a sandwich,
I see.
that are put together and sold.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. I have a question from Vice Chair Benitez Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I was just trying to unmute myself there. That's what the pause was, and then remembered I have to push the button. So I recall the conversations serving on the Legislative Commission when we were talking about the regulation. I appreciate Assemblywoman Kasama asking about the sushi, because I remember that was one of the examples that we talked about where we were trying to wrap our head around, okay, cold and chopsticks versus hot, and making that distinction when you're in a grocery store of what you get from the deli and it's hot and prepared and comes with utensils versus turning around to the cold rack behind you and grabbing something that's prepared but not heated there, but intended to be heated at home. So much of these conversations are coming back to me. If you could remind me, there is a provision in here, and it might be coming from the regulation, but where we talk about the items containing 4 or more servings, and then those are not taxed. So are we? I guess when we say 4 or more servings, I'm thinking of an example. Let's say hypothetically, Assemblyman Roberts goes to Costco, right? Which I believe he did today. So you, like there in their deli area, you might have meals prepared, but they're intended for servings of, like, large servings. So you're not just getting an individual serving. Nothing comes individual at Costco. You like servings for 4 or more. So with the intent, I guess, which standard prevails? Does the 4 or more automatically exclude them, or because you've got something hot and with utensils, it stays in?
Yes, thank you for the question. Terry Upton, Deputy Director for the record. The statute doesn't provide a bright line such as 4 or more. Each case is looked at individually, and what is the intent of the consumption of that food? Is it a whole pizza? Could someone actually sit down and eat that whole pizza? Is it sold in a box where they take it out? Of course, that would be heated state, but if you look at other pizzas that are sold where you take them home and cook them at home, those would not be taxable. So it really, it's what is the intent? Because there's so many situations on how food is sold and how many servings there could be. That answers your question.
I guess I would ask then, because they're, I believe that the regulation gave 90 days for a business to come in compliance with this new methodology versus the old methodology. I think by this point we're past the 90 days. So do we have established practices where right now someone would know where tax is applicable and where it is not? Or are we coming up with hypotheticals that already are being addressed and the retailer knows if what's applicable or not, just by now the practice of doing it for, I guess, at least 1 or 2 quarters?
Yes, thank you for the question, Terry Upton, for the record. These are established practices. Retailers know by now what's taxable, what's not. The department has had numerous classes available through Ask the Advisor. So I hope that answers your question, and maybe Deputy Director Hughes can step in to add further clarification.
Go ahead, Deputy Director.
Yes. This is Shelley Hughes, Chief Deputy for the Department of Taxation. And to answer your question, yes, I believe that the taxpayers are familiar now with our regulation. I think the issue you were talking about with the regulation and the prepackaged food had to do with the very thing. It's a prepackaged food, so it'd be 4 or more in a prepackaged container. So it's already packaged together. It's not separate. It's not buying 4 separate items. It's in one item that's prepackaged all together. That's where the exclusion comes for the regulation. I hope I clarified that rather than cause more confusion.
Okay. More? Okay. All right. Thank you. And then just to add to our list of foods, I have a message from Mr. Ginden, our fiscal analyst, who said, just confirmed it's not just about heating. As you get salad or gazpacho at a restaurant, then it is cold but still prepared food for immediate consumption, so taxable. Additionally, I just would like to direct members to the Nevada Constitution. It's Article 10, 3, sub A, that has the food exempt from taxes on retail sales and the exceptions there. So with that, I've got a question from Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Now I'm very hungry. We've talked about sushi, gazpacho, and it's almost dinner time. I actually find this topic quite fascinating. I understand what you're trying to do in the bill, but I guess my question is just a little bit of a follow-up of a couple of my colleagues. As Assemblywoman Kasama mentioned and Vice Chair Benitez Thompson, some of these issues seem a little confusing. You know, you can blur that line when you have a retailer who maybe is serving food to be consumed right there, but then has like a takeout option for heating up your food later. I think about I think it was California Pizza Kitchen, where you can eat your food there, but then you can add on additional food to take home and heat up later. And so my question, and I think you touched on it a little bit, Ms. Upton, was how do taxpayers, if they're confused about how they apply this and what they're supposed to do, since they're the ones who actually have to collect the tax on site, what options are there for them to get that education and reach out to you to get some clarity when we have these tricky situations where, you know, they're serving food on premises, but then also allowing people to take food out?
Thank you for the question. Terry Upton for the Department of Taxation, for the record. They have several opportunities to reach out to the department. We have a call center who are available to answer their questions. They can also write into the department and receive an advisory that is in writing. And we also have Ask the Advisor classes, which they can attend, and we will give that information to them. We also have technical bulletin, I believe, on this subject that is out there on our website, and some FAQs. So there are a lot of opportunities provided to taxpayers if they have questions on this subject.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Okay, and certainly committee, our fiscal analysts are available to answer any other questions you may come up with later, or I'm sure we can also reach out to Director Young and her staff to ask questions should any more come up. So with that, Director, was there anyone else as part of your presentation who you'd like to have speak?
Thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director. No, there's no one else that we would like to have speak, but really what I would like to just clarify here is the goal from repealing this provision is that the department can provide additional guidance. Because right now the law prevents us by identifying the establishment that to whether they're to collect the tax or not. And so our goal is to be able to expand the guidance provided in this area so that there is clear information out to the taxpayers. So thank you.
Thank you for that. So with that, we're going to go to support. Do we have anyone on the Zoom in support? BPS? Is there anyone else? Okay, seeing none, let's go to the telephones, please.
Testify in support of Senate Bill 25. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 969. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, members of the Assembly Committee on Revenue. My name is Brian Wachter, BRYANWACHTER. I'm the Senior Vice President at the Retail Association of Nevada. We want to thank Director Young and her staff for being so diligent in keeping Nevada in compliance with the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Agreement. We are very proud that Nevada is a governing member. And as this conversation and hearing has brought up, it is very confusing and very complex on what's taxable and not taxable. The Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Agreement provides us with clarity so that our members and our retailers know what's required and what's not required. And as hard as it might be believed, Senate Bill 25 actually provides some clarity specifically on this issue. And we look forward to keeping our taxpayers in compliance and keeping those compliance costs down and low for the state of Nevada. And we urge your support on Senate Bill 25.
Mr. Wachter, so I appreciate that Director Young said that there are bulletins and that her staff is available to provide information. Do you feel like your members, not just from the department, but also from the work that you do and possibly other chambers, if you're aware, are able to get that information, not just when they know they need to make a change, but that they're given that information that there is a change that they need to make?
I believe that working with our partners, the Retail Association, the chambers, as well as the department, we are able to get that message out. This is something that our members pay a lot of attention to. We were involved during the regulatory process, so it is something that we are constantly analyzing and making sure that our members are in compliance. As you know, the state of Nevada doesn't have traditional tax collectors. The retailer fills that role. And so it is something that they take seriously and that they want to stay in compliance in. And so I would say it's an active partnership between our retailers and the state to make sure everyone knows what their job is and how to stay in compliance.
Thank you for that. Next person in support, please.
Chair, the public line is open and working. However, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone in opposition? I don't see anyone on the Zoom, so if we could please go to the phones for opposition.
Chair, the line is open and working. However, we do not have any callers for opposition at this time.
Okay, thank you. Same with the neutral. I don't believe we have anyone on the Zoom, so if we can go to the phones, please.
Chair, the line is open and working. However, we do not have any other callers to provide testimony in neutral at this time.
Thank you. With that, Director, would you or anyone else from your staff like to make any closing remarks?
Thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. We would like to thank you for your time in hearing SB 25 so that the department can provide additional guidance out to our taxpayers in Nevada and hopefully provide clarity at the lowest level of compliance. So we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. With that, I will close out the hearing on SB 25 and open the hearing on SB 74, which revises provisions relating to the population total used in determining the distribution of certain taxes, and ask you to please go ahead, Director Young, and start when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Cohen and members of the committee. My name is Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. I'm here with members of my team, again, Chief Deputy Shelley Hughes, Jeff Hardcastle, the state demographer, and Kevin Williams, our management analyst who's responsible for our tax distributions. We are here to present SB 74, which revises the provisions where population will be used for certain tax distributions. This is a housekeeping bill that cleans up language that aligns with how the department is processing our tax distributions. Over the past 2 years, the executive team has been working hard on reviewing our processes. This review is large in part so that we can become more efficient and modernize the department in an anticipation of our IT modernization project. With that being said, a while back, we asked our internal auditor to audit some of our processes. During this audit, it was discovered that the department was not following the law. This bill removes the language enacted in 1999 for utilizing the Census Bureau population numbers, as the department has not used those numbers in the state tax revenue distribution process. We have always used the state demographer's certified population numbers that are certified by the governor. And there are many reasons for this. And at this time, what I'd like to do is turn the time over again to Chief Deputy Hughes, who will go through the provisions of the bill and explain the circumstances around this request.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Chief Deputy Hughes.
Good afternoon again, Chair Cohen and committee members. For the record, my name is Shelley Hughes, Chief Deputy for the Department of Taxation. I'm here today to introduce SB 74. SB 74 clarifies the population totals certified by the governor annually are to be used in determining the allocation and deposit of proceeds of the basic city-county relief tax, and revises provisions governing the population totals used in determining the distribution of certain taxes. The requested changes are to statutes that govern the distribution of state taxes, and the changes do not have any impact on how the population totals are arrived at, nor do the changes impact the local government's petition and appeal rights of the population totals. Existing law requires that population totals be used for the distribution of certain taxes. In several provisions of the NRS, such as NRS 360, 690, and 377057, the population totals to be used are the population totals certified by the governor, unless those totals conflict with the Bureau of Census totals. In the case of conflict, the Bureau of Census totals must be used. NRS 360-285, subsection 2, provides that the department must use the population totals certified by the governor for any tax that is collected for apportionment in whole or in part to any political subdivision where the basis of the apportionment is the population of the political subdivision. Walking through the bill, Section 1 amends NRS 360-690, subsection 8, and eliminates for certain taxes the requirement to use the population totals of the Bureau of the Census of the United States Department of Commerce in case of conflict with the population totals of the governor. Section 2 amends NRS 377-055 and clarifies that the population totals used to make the determinations are the population totals certified by the governor annually. Section 3 amends NRS 377-057 and eliminates the requirement to use the population totals of the Bureau of Census in the case of conflict with the population totals of the governor. And Section 4 provides that the bill is effective upon passage and approval. The department, through the state demographer, annually determines the population of each town, which includes each unincorporated town, as well as each township, city, and county. Once the demographer has determined the population, it is submitted to the governor, who certifies the population totals on or before March 1st of each year, as required by 360-285. The department uses the governor's certified population totals every year to determine the calculation of distributions for the basic city-county relief tax, the supplemental city-county relief tax, and to local governments for money remaining after base monthly allocations. Since the Census Bureau totals have never been used since the enactment of this language in the 1990s, the department finds this bill to be a housekeeping matter. We discovered that we weren't using the Bureau of Census totals after our internal auditor performed an internal audit of our distributions. However, we thought we were properly calculating these distributions because a similar provision, NRS 360-285, subsection 2, provides that the department must use the population totals certified by the governor for any tax that is collected for apportionment in whole or in part to any political subdivision where the basis of the apportionment is the population of the political subdivision. There are several problems with using census decennial totals in annual census estimates, most notably timing. The governor's certified population totals for the current year are based on population totals from 2 fiscal years prior. If we were to use census decennial totals and annual census estimates, these are based off the current year. Would we use census totals 2 fiscal years behind to correlate with the governor's certified totals? Additionally, the governor's certified totals are released March 1st for counties, incorporated cities, and unincorporated towns. Census annual estimates for counties are released in March, and unincorporated city estimates are released in May. And the Census Bureau does not produce decennial totals or annual census estimates for unincorporated towns. Furthermore, census totals are continually updated, so it causes problems on what date those totals should be retrieved. Another problem is the mandatory language in NRS 360-285, which requires the department to use governor-certified population totals for any tax that is collected for apportionment, where the basis of the apportionment is the population. While the census language is in NRS 360-690 and NRS 377-057 deals with calculating population change, is inconsistent with the language in NRS 360-285. It is not clear why we would use the governor's certified population for apportionment purposes, then use census population totals to calculate the population change over a 5-year period. Next, the language is unclear when census totals should be used to determine if there's a conflict between census totals and governor's certified totals. Is it every year and we use annual census estimates instead of governor's certified totals? Or is it every 10 years and we use decennial totals and then use governor's certified totals in off years? Then the problem becomes if it is determined that decennial census totals and annual census estimates are to be used every year, determining whether there is a conflict. In reality, the decennial census totals and the annual census estimates will always be in conflict with the governor's certified totals. Thus, according to NRS 360-690 and 377-057, the decennial census totals and annual census estimates should always be used. Decennial totals would be used every 10 years, and annual census estimates would be used in off years. The problem with using annual census estimates is annual census estimates do not include estimated populations of unincorporated towns. So the governor's certified totals would have to be used for those population totals. Again, this causes a problem because the governor's certified totals are calculated based on the population for the 2 fiscal years prior, and census totals are calculated for the current year. And again, we would have to determine if the statute requires that we use census totals 2 fiscal years behind to correlate with the governor's certified totals. Alternating between census totals and governor's certified totals in the calculation of the distributions becomes a difficult task. We would not have consistent statistical algorithms year to year. And finally, if census totals are only to be used in decennial years, then the governor's certified totals could be used in off years. But then we encounter 2 problems: inconsistencies from moving from the decennial census totals to the governor's certified totals, and a timing difference regarding the decennial census totals based on the current year and the governor's certified totals being 2 fiscal years behind. Again, we will have to determine if the statute requires that we use census totals 2 fiscal years behind to correlate with the governor's certified totals. Additionally, the Bureau of Census continually updates the census totals, so these totals can change, and we would have to continually update the population totals when calculating the distribution. I want to provide you with some legislative history of the current law. Assembly Bill 721 from 1969, codified as NRS 360-285, was enacted to require where any tax collected for apportionment, the population would be determined by the last preceding national census of the Bureau of the Census. Transition from one such census to the next was required on July 1st of the year following the year in which the census was taken. Every payment prior to such date shall be based upon the earlier census, and every payment after such date shall be based upon the later census. Assembly Bill 322 from 1983 revised the language of NRS 360-285 to require where any tax collected for apportionment, the population would be determined by the governor's certified population instead of the census totals. Senate Bill 494 in 1987 allowed for the appeal population determinations prior to being certified by the governor, and it also allowed the department to hire a demographer. Assembly Bill 82 in 1991 changed the certification date to the current date of March 1st. Then in Assembly Bill 369 in 1981, which was codified as NRS 377-057, it was enacted as part of a comprehensive tax reform package sought to limit taxes on real property and increase sales tax. As originally enacted in NRS 377, the statute required the governor to certify the population of each county annually. The statute did not contain any reference to the census. Senate Bill 506 in 1993 added language to NRS 377-057, requiring that the census totals be used if the census totals were in conflict with the totals certified by the governor. The bill was enacted to correct errors made in another Assembly bill from a prior session. In an amendment to the bill, the census language was added. There is no discussion of the use of the census totals in the legislative history, nor was there any discussion of any issues arising from the use of population figures certified by the governor. Thus, it is unclear why this change was made. Senate Bill 254 in 1997, codified as NRS 360-690, added language to require census totals to be used if in conflict with the governor's certified totals. The legislative history contains no discussion as to why. Senate Bill 538 in 1999 revised NRS 360-690 and clarified when census totals were to be used. In the Senate Committee on Taxation minutes of April 6, 1999 for SB 538, Teresa Glasner from the Department of Taxation said that the governor's certified totals were used until the census totals were released, then the formula would be reestablished based on the census totals. In the Senate Committee on Taxation minutes of April 8, 1999 for SB 538, there was a discussion about when the census totals should be used. There was a discussion that using estimates may be unconstitutional. The chair of the committee clarified that when census figures were current, they were used, and in off years, the state demographer would provide totals which were certified by the governor. The legislative history of NRS 360-690 appears to suggest the legislative intent was to use the decennial totals every 10 years and then the governor's certified totals in off years. With no discussion in the legislative history for NRS 377-057, can we assume that the legislative intent was also to use the decennial census totals every 10 years and then the governor's certified totals in off years? With SB 74, we would like to remove the language that indicates the Bureau of Census population totals will be used when they are in conflict with the governor's certified population totals. This language occurs both in NRS 377-057 and in NRS 360-690. There are several reasons why we believe there will not be a negative impact if this language is removed. First, during our research, we cannot find where the department has ever used the census totals. Based on the legislative history for NRS 360-690, we believe that the census totals should have been used in 2000, 2010, and now 2020. However, this issue was brought to our attention by our internal auditor and not an outside party that was affected by our use of the governor's certified totals. Second, the legislative history of NRS 360-690 suggests that the census language was added to reach more accurate population totals. However, there isn't any reference to why the language was added to NRS 377-057. With the addition of the demographer to the department in 1987 and the ability for local governments to appeal the population totals before they are certified by the governor pursuant to NRS 360-283, subsection 3, and NAC 360-390, these actions ensure more accurate totals will be reached. Based on these reasons, we cannot determine any negative impact if the census language is removed in both statutes. In fact, we determined there would be a positive impact if we remove the language. The change would harmonize NRS 377-057 and NRS 360-690 with other tax statutes such as NRS 360-285. No other allocation provisions in NRS 377 or NRS 360 reference using census totals. Removing the language would assist in carrying out the original intent of 377-057 as shown by the statute's legislative history, and removing the language would allow for timely, consistent, and clear distributions. In summary, we are requesting to remove the language present in both NRS 377-057 and NRS 360-690 that indicates that the Bureau of Census population totals will be used when they are in conflict with the governor's certified population totals. And we request the language in NRS 377-055 clarify that only the governor's certified population totals will be used. And I think it's important, again, to emphasize that the requested changes are to statutes that govern the distribution of state taxes, and the changes do not have any impact on how the population totals are arrived at, nor do the changes impact the local government's petition and appeal rights of the population totals. And we can stop here for questions on SB 74, or if the chair wishes, we can give a high-level overview of the consolidated tax distribution, which is a minor element at issue here, but it may help explain why the proposed revisions in SB 74 are necessary.
Thank you, Chief Deputy Hughes. I think what we're going to do is have our fiscal analyst, Mr. Ginden, go through the charts that have been provided to committee members, are also online for the public to see as exhibits. I think that will, he's planned something, and that will help give us some information about CTAX and put things in perspective for us. So please go ahead, Mr. Ginden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Russell Gideon, Principal Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division, Legislative Council Bureau. And I'll give my disclaimer that as your nonpartisan legislative staff, we neither support nor oppose legislation. I'm here to present information that your staff, working with Department of Taxation staff, in terms of working the issue that it was in SB 74 and making sure we understood, trying to figure out the language and then some of the points that Ms. Hughes was making. So what I have is a set of 5 tables that were prepared by your staff, working with information that we were getting from the Department of Taxation, as well as working with the Department of Taxation on putting the tables together. And so let me bring up the first table, but hopefully you have these available to you. I've tried to color code them a little bit to make it a little easier to present. And so I'm going to try and blow them up on the screen here, but also make it so that I can still see them on my screen to present. So I thought what to try and go through these tables is for the members' benefit is to provide sort of the context by in the numerical world of the data, the points that Ms. Hughes was making in her presentation about, I think, some of the issues that are involved in this language that is in law and how under an assumption of how it would be administered, as Ms. Hughes pointed out, there is potentially some ambiguity about how it would be administered, had taxation administered it. So the tables that you have here, the first one is table 1, which should have the light blue banner across the top in terms of trying to just help people find the right tables amongst all the tables. And so this is going under the assumption that every year when the Department of Taxation is doing these statutory calculations, under that assumption that, hey, they're supposed to see if there's a conflict between the demographer's estimates and the census estimates, what those numbers could look like for the 2 years that are displayed here and what the potential implications could be for that. So you see here in the table 1A, the top block of the table, in the left-hand side with the orange shading, those are the state demographer's estimates for July 1st, 2015 and July 1st, 2016, that these are the governor's certified estimates that you heard Ms. Hughes reference that on or before, I believe it's early March, that the governor's required to certify the estimates for the preceding July 1st period. So you see here that these would be the 2 fiscal years that would be used to calculate the growth rate that would be used to do the SCCRT required calculations in 377 for the guaranteed counties, which you see highlighted there in the green rows. Those are the guaranteed counties. And under the distribution here, guaranteed counties are exactly that. When the SCCRT was put in place under this guaranteed, non-guaranteed structure, the guaranteed counties have an amount that is distributed to them 1/12 every month, and that amount is guaranteed, and then it's adjusted every year based on the statutory formulas. And that statutory formula is you take the last year's amount and adjust it for the growth in the population and the CPI, or the growth in prior years' SCCRT distributions, whichever's less. So you can see there again in the orange block, there's the demographer's estimates. And then going over to the right-hand block shaded in yellow, that's the census estimates for that July 1st, 2015 and July 1st, 2016 periods. So you have the same 2 periods. So to give you the perspective, well, you can go, I'll just go down to Clark, which is the 3rd row, and then Douglas, which is the guaranteed county. To just say, well, you go look at the left-hand side in the orange, the demographer's estimates, and then the census. Well, the demographer's estimates for these 2 local governments are higher than the census. So then, right, as has been discussed here, that's the conflict, that the estimates are not the same, and rarely would they be. right? I think that's unreasonable to think that the census doing their thing and the demographer doing their thing are going to come up with the exact same estimates for all these entities for each year. So if that's the conflict, then that the census estimates are different than the demographer, then the law would require taxation to use the census estimates under this scenario that we're assuming that that's okay. Every year when there's this conflict, you have to use the census estimates. But what you're actually doing is then using those census estimates to calculate the growth rate, because it's not the levels, it's the growth rate that's being used to determine the guaranteed calculation in NRS Chapter 377 for the guaranteed portion for those guaranteed counties. And so you can see then looking there that even though Clark has higher estimates for population for the state demographer than the census, the growth rate for, the growth rate then is higher for under the demographer's estimates than census, the 2.26 versus 2.01. But you go down to Douglas, and again, the population estimates by the demographer are higher in levels than the census estimates. But there, the census estimate growth rate is higher. So you now start to get, I think, some of the elements that Ms. Hughes was talking about, that, okay, if the conflict is that the estimates are different, then you have to use those to calculate the growth rates. And then you're going to get different results by using the census versus the state demographer's estimates, where there's a statutory provision for the demographer that is required to prepare the estimate. There's a regulatory process for preparing those estimates to be used. But here, this piece of law would say, no, you're supposed to use the census because there's a conflict. So you can look in the far right-hand column and just the green rows, those would be the changes where it's going to be a positive change using the census or a negative change using the census in terms of the difference in the growth rates using the census estimates versus the demographer's estimates. So that's going through for the FY 2018 calculation. So the table 1B, which is below that, is just showing you the results that would have been in place for FY 2019. And thus, again, here, the population estimates are for July 1st, 2016 and July 1st, 2017 census and demographer. And again, you can just look through there and especially in the right-hand column and see the differences with regards to whether the growth rate coming out of the census estimates would be higher than the growth rate coming out of the demographer's estimates. And so that's going to have a potential impact on the guaranteed calculations for those guaranteed counties. And so that's really what I wanted to show in this table, is allow you to see sort of provide the actual visual context to the points that Ms. Hughes is making about you have census and demographer preparing these estimates. And then if there is this conflict, which is the estimates are different, then what could potentially happen here with regards to taxation and being required to use the census estimates to do the calculations in for the SCCRT distributions in Chapter 377. So then what I wanted to do is bring up Table 2 here. And you'll have to let me know. Sometimes there can be a little bit of delay in terms of I'm bringing it up to share it, but it may not pop up on the screen, even though it looks like it's on my side. So can everybody see Table 2 now?
Actually, it's not on the screen at all.
Okay, let me I've been told if you wait just a few seconds, it's got to sort of clear its head before you bring up the next one. So let me get out of the share and bring up document 2. How about now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So table 2 is, and as Ms. Hughes was going, you see they have information in their slide deck. There's also information in the back of the bill explanation for the committee's consideration. is here wanted to show that, as was stated, this is tied into the SCCRT is one of the revenues that is distributed at the first tier of the consolidated tax distribution, or as we've referred to it as C-tax, and along with the 5 other revenue sources. And so I thought I'd just provide a little bit of information on that here in tabular form to complement the information that taxation has in their slide deck and the information that your staff has provided in the bill explanation. So what I've just decided for the committee's benefit here is provided these are the 6 revenue sources that we talk about that go into the first tier. And by first tier, we mean there's a distribution requirement for these taxes, these 6 taxes, to be distributed at the county level to the counties. And that's the first tier bucket, or the first tier. So the basic city county relief tax, this is the 0.5% sales tax rate that has come up in discussions from time to time. And so it is got distribution formulas that require it to go to, if it's an in-state sale, meaning that the sale can be sourced and occurred in that county, then the revenues from that are sourced to the county. If they're out-of-state sales, meaning it's a business not maintaining a fixed place of business in the state, then they're distributed to the counties on a per capita basis. And I'm going to leave the supplemental for last. So the cigarette tax, this is the 10-cent portion of the cigarette tax rate that is distributed to the counties on a per capita basis. The liquor tax is the 50 cents from the tax on hard liquor, which is the tax that's over 22% alcohol by volume, that is also distributed to the counties on a per capita basis. And then the real property transfer tax, this is the 55 cents per $500 of value tax on a transfer of real property between people. And this is sourced to the county in which the transfer occurred. And then you have a portion of the 4-cent basic governmental services tax. This is what you pay when you're registering your vehicle each year. So there's a statutory distribution formula for distributing the proceeds from this between the state general fund and highway fund, school districts, and to the county. So this is the portion that is distributed to the county. So that is 5 of the 6 revenue sources that go into, again, this first tier of the C-tax to be distributed to the local governments within the county, but I'll get to that in a little bit. So in the second column here, highlighted in orange, you have the supplemental city county relief tax, or the SCCRT. This is the rate that is previously was talked about. It's 1.75%. And here, there's the statutory distribution formulas that have been discussed for allocating the SCCRT money between the guaranteed counties highlighted in green and then the non-guaranteed. And so the way that works is that, as we've stated, you have to do the calculation for how much should the guaranteeds get for a year, and then they're distributed 1/12 of that amount each month. Then the amount of the SCCRT tax that is above the guaranteed amount is then required to be distributed amongst the non-guaranteed counties as the share of their actual SCCRT collections to the total SCCRT collections for the non-guaranteed counties. And so that's, you can see here, these are the actual distributions for FY 2018 to for those 6 revenue sources under the statutory provisions for that. So then the table 2B here, and so this, table 2A would then be using the demographer's estimates, doing what taxation said there, use the demographer's estimates to do the calculation for the SCCRT. And so table 2B would be the distributions that would have occurred for the SCCRT had you used those census estimates that I showed in table 1A. And so down here at the bottom, you can see the amounts for the SCCRT, but it's actually just easier to get, if you've got it planted out 2-sided, to go to the flip the page. And table 2C is showing you the difference between the census population estimates versus those that were actually done in the top table using the demographer's estimates. So you can see as was, I think, somewhat discussed here or referenced it by Ms. Hughes, is that, right, there may not be any impact. And here you can see it's, I would argue, relatively de minimis. That the change in the distribution amongst the guaranteed would have been approximately $14,000 for FY 2018 had you used the census estimates versus the demographers. And because of that approximately $14,000 went to the guaranteed, then that reduces the amount for distribution to the non-guaranteed by that approximately $14,000. So that would have been the results here. Now, I think what's worth referencing here on this point is the point that was made by Ms. Hughes, is that this is using the census estimates for these years that exist now. And so the census estimates, they do change versus the demographers' estimates that are certified by the governor, they're fixed. So July 2015, that estimate that's certified by the governor that the demographer prepared for, say, July 1st, 2015 is fixed. It will not change. Versus the census estimates for July 1st, 2015, when they originally prepared it, are different than the estimates that if you would go to the census website and pull the estimate for July 1st, 2015 today, it's most likely going to be different for all 17 counties. And so that would be one of the issues, is that the census estimates are sort of a moving estimate because of the methodology that they use to do their estimates versus the statutory requirements in place for the demographer to do their estimates and then be certified by the governor to be used, as Ms. Hughes pointed out. So that's table 2. And so table 3 just shows you the results for FY 2019 in terms of the same stuff, using the stuff from table 1B, those estimates for the census, and then going through it. And you can look at that table and see that again, the change net there was a little larger, but it was around $227,000 for had you used the census estimates compared to the demographer's estimates to do the SCCRT distribution for FY 2019. So then what I want to do is bring up document 4. I can bring it, see it here. So that's sort of the results for the SCCRT, and as we discussed, the first tier of the C-tax for distributing revenues to the county. And then those revenue amounts that are available from those 6 revenues at the county are distributed to local governments within the county based on the statutory provisions that are in NRS 360.680 and 360.690 for determining the second tier distributions. And so what I wanted to do is bring up here table 4. And so table 4 has the purple banner across the top. And so under table 4, there's what's called at the second tier of the C-tax distribution, there's what's called a base allocation and then excess allocation. So the base allocation basically takes the amount of C-tax that was distributed to the local governments in a county that are eligible to receive it. And those would be counties, cities, towns, special districts, and enterprise districts. And so you take that amount and you adjust it for the consumer price index, and that's their base amount to be distributed for the current fiscal year. So taxation is then required to distribute it to the extent there's enough actual revenue generated to distribute 1/12 of that fiscal year base amount to the local governments based on that base share allocation. So that's the base. So then the excess allocation is where the statutory provisions that you see here that taxation is asking to be removed from 360.690 is in the calculation provisions for the excess distribution. And those are the excess distribution shares are based on factors using the 5-year average growth in population and the 5-year average growth in assessed valuation to then do these mathematical calculations to calculate what that excess distribution share is. And so the excess distribution would be is if there's more than enough money to cover the base allocation for a month, then that's excess. So then the excess has to be distributed based on these shares that come out of this mathematical calculation. So what you see here in table 4, again, keeping the color schematic, in the orange is there's for every one of the entities that is eligible to receive money from the C-tax distribution under the second tier distribution mechanism. I've shown you there in the orange column on the left-hand side, that's the 5-year average growth rate in the population based on the demographer's estimates. So looking specifically at Carson City, the 5-year average growth in population for the results that would have been used for doing the calculation for FY 2018 was minus 0.31%. Going to the left end for the census, it would have been minus 0.19%. And then, so here's the difference, census less than demographer. So that would then be the change in the 5-year average population estimate that would be run through the mathematical formula for calculating the SS distribution shares. So you can see that I've listed here every one of the counties and then within the counties, the entities. So you can see here for special districts, there is no population for them. So their factor is just being driven off the average 5-year average growth and assessed value. So that's why I put not applicable here, so that we don't have to worry about population for doing the calculations for special districts. But let me scroll down one page here and you see Clark County, which has, right, the county, you have the cities, and then you have all the towns, and then you have special districts. So as Ms. Hughes had pointed out, one of the issues here that I think causes some tension with regards to actually administering these provisions is, as was stated, the census is preparing estimates for only counties and cities. They are not providing and preparing estimates for towns. Now, the law requires the state demographer to actually prepare estimates for counties, cities, and towns. Why? Because you have towns getting money from the C-tax and you need population estimates to be able to calculate the 5-year average growth. So you can suddenly see here, you have a mismatch if taxation is supposed to switch over and use the census estimates. So they would have them for counties and cities, but they wouldn't have them for the towns. So you'd start to get a little bit of apples and oranges here of, hey, I've got census estimates and I'll use those for one group, counties and cities, but I don't have those. So I guess taxation would potentially have to say, well, I guess I have to use the demographer's estimates for the towns because that's all I have. And so that's starting to create that you have one person, the demographer, creating a set of estimates for the towns, but you have the census, who is another set of demographers and preparing estimates that would be used for counties and cities. So I just wanted to let you see the point that Ms. Hughes is making here, tabular here in the real world data that is available and what it would mean for to go through the calculations. So then the right-hand side is just, it's the same information, just doing the calculations for FY 2019 in terms of the 5-year average for, based on the demographer's estimates and the 5-year average growth based on using the census estimates. And so that's sort of what's going on here with regards, you can see that because the 5-year average population growth is part of the calculation formula for determining how to distribute the excess to local governments to the second tier, there'd be this issue. So then the final table that I just wanted to bring up quickly, and sorry, just trying to pause a little bit here to give my computer a chance to go through this, is, whoops, sorry, I lost the share screen button, is Oops. There we go. So can everybody see this document with the red banner at the top?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the final table here, table 5, is taking those 5-year average population estimates for the demographer, which was what was actually done by the Department of Taxation, and doing the calculations for the excess distribution shares. And then this is what Mr. Williams does, Kevin Williams for the Department of Taxation, is does these calculations and then does the distributions for the first tier and the second tier every month for the C-Tax. So again, the left side here is FY 2018. And again, the orange is the estimates that would have been, the allocations that would have been done at the second tier, which taxation actually did using the demographer's estimates. And then in yellow would have been the distribution amount using the census estimates for those 5-year average growth rates and then deriving them through the mathematical calculations. And then you can see the dollar amount. The change. And one of the things you're going to note here, if you went and looked at the difference in table 2, which is you see the $302 for Carson City here as the Carson City difference. Well, that was the difference that the SCCRT distribution. And so you see that matches up. If you go look at table 2C, there's the $302 difference for Carson City due to the SCCRT. That's what you see balancing out here. Because that's the second tier distribution. It's a zero-sum game within a county. That if you're going to change people's shares, you change them in a way such that if you have a difference in $1 and you're going to change the allocation of that dollar amongst the entities, you still have to get back to the sum of the changes amongst all the entities within a county must sum back to 1. That's the C-Tax at the second tier within a county. And so that's if you want to look through the table and you'd see the amounts shown for the county totals for 18 and 19, it's going to balance back against the amounts that you see in table 2C and table 3C to the SCCRT. So that's in a nutshell what would happen is if the census estimates could change somewhat a little bit, the estimates for the SCCRT and thus be changing the first tier amounts that go to the guaranteed counties directly, and then indirectly changing the amount that would be distributed amongst the non-guaranteeds. And then those amounts, since you're changing the amount in the first tier, then those amounts go into the second tier. But within a county, it's a zero-sum game for the distributions. And so this was just an attempt to try and put tables together to, and it was as much for staff and taxation and fiscal, to work through this issue to see what it would potentially mean for this language to be administered under this. Well, if the conflict is that, hey, every year census estimates are supposed to be used if they're in conflict with the demographers. And as your staff, I would offer to you that possibly one of the practical effects, and I doubt that would be the intended effect, is, again, as I've already stated, the rare thing would be for the planets to align such that the demographer's estimates and the census estimates matched for every county and city. So almost every year in and year out, could they be close? Could they even be equal for some? But for all of them, thus year in and year out, there'd be a conflict. And you can see the tables that I showed you in table 1, the numbers in table 1, there's a conflict for every county. There's a conflict for every city. So what would be the effect of this law if administered? I would offer to basically nullify using the demographer's estimates, because taxation is supposed to be using the census estimates. So you have a statutory process for the demographer's estimates to be prepared and then be used, but then to turn around and say, no, you got to use the census when there's a conflict. And so I just wanted to make that observation as your staff of having looked at this bill, the issue, and it sort of working to the data to get that full understanding of what the potential could be for this provision to be administered by Department of Taxation. And so with that, Madam Chair, that I realize that was a lot of information about this, the bill with regards to the population issue, but also the first tier and second tier. But I can attempt to answer any questions, or we also have Department of Taxation here who actually administers the first and second tier provisions of the CTAX. And with that, I'm willing to answer any questions that members of the committee may have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ginden. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So this bill is not about changing CTAX, correct? That was a head nod, yes? Okay, and.
That is, from your staff's point of view, that is correct. It's about these provisions with regards to the language that you see in red in the bill about the requirement to use the census estimates when they are in conflict with the demographer's estimates. And as Ms. Hughes pointed out, there's potentially some ambiguity as to what conflict means, and does it mean every year you use the census estimates because they're preparing annual estimates just like the demographers, or is it supposed to be an every 10-year census thing? But I would argue even the mathematics will get complicated if every 10 years you're supposed to try and switch over to the census estimates. But you can see here, you need to do a 5-year average growth. The census is a point estimate for 1 year. So you'd have to then start the blend either with the census and or the demographers to calculate a 5-year average. So as Ms. Hughes pointed out, that even if you were supposed to do this on a decennial basis, you still have a mathematical issue that potentially has to be addressed.
Thank you for that. So, Ms. Director Hughes, or I'm sorry, Chief Deputy Director Hughes, so what happens if we don't pass this bill? How does that impact your department and how determinations are made?
If I could, I'd actually like Director Young to answer that question.
Please go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. Thank you, Chair Cohen, for the question. This is a hard conversation to have because when this was brought to our attention, we investigated the matter and found that this would be mathematically problematic, especially to go back since to the 2019 or 2000 and, let me clarify, 1999 when this provision was put into place. And so we would have to go back and likely have to recalculate that information. But as Mr. Ginden has provided in his spreadsheets that he's demonstrated there, that the change, might necessitate pulling back revenues that have been distributed already to local governments. Some, it would move some from one county to another, and some de minimisly, and others it might be a little bit larger number. But this would take quite a bit of time if this bill is not passed to rectify that situation.
Thank you for that. And just to confirm, so CTAX is extremely complicated. We know that. And so with CTAX, it's required to look at population growth of towns. But the information from the census isn't providing that, correct? The census is looking at counties and other things, but not the towns that are required to be examined for CTAX.
So Melanie Young, Executive Director for the record. Thank you, Chair Cohen, for the question. The federal census numbers will determine the counties and cities, but does not determine the towns. So when the state demographer does his population numbers, it is the counties, cities, and towns, unincorporated towns.
Thank you. And that's required for CTAX, correct?
Melanie Young, for the record, that is correct. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we're very clear on that. And then, Mr. Gindin, do you have anything to add to that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I would just offer, because I think that's a very good question. And so, since, as you stated, the statute says that there has to be this calculation done to distribute the money under the C-tax to all those entities that you see listed in the table there: counties, cities, towns, enterprise districts, and special districts. The three entities that involve population to be able to do the calculation are counties, cities, and towns. And as has been stated here, you have the census only doing it for counties and cities. The demographer's doing it for towns. So in my mind, I look at this your staff and say, well, if the statute is left in place and the determination is that you have this conflict and then you're going to administer it annually, taxation would have to use the census estimates to determine the 5-year average growth rate for counties and cities, but then turn around and use the demographer's estimates for towns. And that's just math, but you can see that you're running into a situation where you have the demographer using a methodology to prepare their estimates for counties, cities, and towns simultaneously. And then you have the census preparing estimates for counties and cities. But now you're going to go blend the census estimates for counties and cities with the demographer's estimates for towns to calculate these 5-year average growth rates to drive through the excess C-tax calculations. And I think that would potentially become problematic given my history as your staff with the C-tax as a distribution mechanism.
Thank you for that. Committee, Vice Chair Benitez-Thompson, but before you ask your question, I also just want to remind the committee that that Mr. Hardcastle, the demographer, is here. I'll certainly let Mr. Hardcastle make any statement he wants. I don't know if you just plan to answer questions, but he is available as well. So with that, thank you. Please go ahead, Vice Chair.
Thank you so much. It's not so much a question, it's just a big fan of our state demographer and the work he does. I love the site. I love all the reports that you produce. I'm referencing one in one of my bills because people seem to think that, you know, how we estimate populations or what the composite of our populations might look like is some type of magical thinking. I'm like, no, it's not. It all exists in the Department of Taxation. Big fan of the demographer, living in the Department of Taxation as well. So I love it.
Thank you. Is that a question down at the end?
That was a second.
Okay, thank you. So you got a second, Mr. Hardcastle as well, dittoing what the Vice Chair had to say about your work. Okay, so I am not seeing any other questions. And Mr. Hardcastle, do you have a statement you'd like to make or testimony on the bill?
No, excuse me, Jeff Hardcastle, for the record, state demographer. I'd like to thank the Vice Chair for her compliment, and I'm here just as a role to answer questions at this time. You know, if you start me talking about population estimates, I could go on for a couple of hours, so it's probably best to just answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm not seeing any other questions. Director, do any of your staff members have other testimony?
Yes, Chair Cohen, thank you. For the record, Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. I really want to thank you and your committee's time for hearing this bill, and would like to shout out to Russell and the tax team for all the spreadsheets and calculations that they have put in to give a visual depiction of our testimony today. And we realize that this is a hard conversation to have by coming forward from the department on a statutory change that removes language implemented in 1999 that the department never implemented for the distribution of state tax revenues to local governments. when our internal auditor did bring this to our attention, the executive team's attention, we investigated the matter thoroughly, reviewed the requirements, and if we were to implement this statute and the issues surrounding that became readily apparent. We believe that if the statutory provisions were implemented, the department and or local governments would have come forward during a legislative session to make the necessary changes. We do view this matter as a housekeeping matter since we've never implemented or used the Bureau of Census totals. Our goal in this bill is to align the statute with the processes and with no impact to local governments. Currently, the way the statute is written, it makes these calculations of the distribution process mathematically problematic. If the Census Bureau of totals were to be used in the timing issues when they are pushed and when they are continually updated, it creates conflict what population numbers to use and when, and as well as the point to make that the data is developed for the point in time. Additionally, the Census Bureau does not determine, again, the population of the unincorporated towns. Since we've always used the governor's certified population numbers and will continue to do so if this bill is passed, there should be no effect on local governments. Furthermore, the population counts developed by the state demographer and certified by the governor, the local governments do have a local due process. As you have seen in some of the exhibits and in previous hearings, there has been some opposition from local governments, although indirectly related to this bill about how the state demographer develops those population estimates. I would like to place on the record here today, again, that the department is willing to continue to work with local governments as we transition. And I would like to share with you, Jeff Hardcastle has announced his retirement and he will be retiring at the end of June. And I personally would like to thank Jeff Hardcastle for all of the work that he's done for the state of Nevada in the work that he does in determining not only the federal census, but the population numbers here in Nevada. The department has interviewed for Mr. Hardcastle's replacement and are working to finalize that process. We have discussed a plan with local governments on what the first 6 months of the demographer's job would look like, and that includes outreach to local governments. We thank you for your time and consideration of this proposal, and this concludes our remarks. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. And certainly we also appreciate the work that you've been doing, doing the audit in the first place, realizing that there were probably some issues that needed to be addressed and finding them for us. So with that, seeing no other questions, we will go to the phones and go to support, please.
Chair, the public line is open and working. However, no callers to provide testimony at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any opposition on the phones?
Chair, the public line is open and working. However, we do not have any callers to provide opposition at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any neutral on the phones?
Chair, the line is open and working. However, we do not have any callers to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you for that. And however, I do want to, Director, ask you, I believe there was some of the localities, some of the municipalities, I should say, there was some concern that they expressed in the Senate. I believe you've been working with them, and I just want to put on the record that you're continuing to work with them and that work is moving forward.
Yes, thank you, Chair Cohen, for the comments. Melanie Young, Executive Director, for the record. Yes, we will continue to work with local governments as we bring on the new demographer, and he has the new demographer has an opportunity to work with Mr. Hardcastle through his retirement. We will definitely be working with the local governments on improvements of our processes and or changes necessary.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I actually didn't ask for the Zoom and forgot that Mr. Luke from the City of North Las Vegas is on Zoom. So Mr. Luke, please go ahead.
Not a problem at all. I know it's late. Greetings. You see me? Can you hear me? I'm getting a little bit of delay on my end.
We can hear you and see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Cohen, Vice Chair Benitez Thompson, and the committee members. Yeah, just really quick to encapsulate, Director Young pretty much wrapped it up for us. We were originally in opposition of SB 74 because in opening the NRS, there was concern, having just gone through an appeal process with population estimates, there was some concern on our end and some other local governments' end that the difference in variables in the regression models being used caused some confusion and some questions on our end. So we were looking at this, taking away the census numbers as kind of removing a cap or a check to the process, if you will. But I want to thank Director Young and her staff for meeting with us to have multiple conversations in explaining the intent of this bill and why they're moving forward. And we were able to then, reflect and talk to them about our issues with or concerns with the regulatory process. And I appreciate her committing again on the record that she has volunteered to work with us, and we've accepted that. And we look forward to working with her and her team and the new state demographer, big shoes to fill, and in some transparency and clarity revolving the actual process by which you can't use the same variables for a county or a city that you use for a town. So those are some of the things that I hope that we will be working on and looking at down the road. And if I may, Chair, just to thank Jeff Hardcastle and wish him well in his next, whatever his next adventure is. And also, Mr. Ginden, your understanding of CTAX and your ability to explain it with such animation, I applaud you. So thank you for the time, Chair and committee, and that concludes my testimony.
Thank you. And Mr. Luke, can you just state your name for the record and then just let us know you're in opposition, but happily working toward support?
Got past that in the beginning. Jared Luke, Jared Luke, representing City of North Las Vegas. We are repealing our previous opposition and replacing that with a neutral position on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you cut out a bit, so I'm just going to repeat it. It's Jared Luke. Thank you very much for that. And thank you for the presentation, Director and Chief Deputy Director Hughes. Also, certainly thank you to Mr. Hardcastle and Mr. Ginden. So with that, I will bring a close to Senate Bill 74's hearing and ask, do we have anything from the committee? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to go to public comment, please.
Chair, the public line is open and working. However, there are no callers at this time to provide public comment.
Thank you very much. Mr. Daly, please go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Daly, DALY, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. Today is April 15th. That's tax day in non-pandemic times. So it's a great day to talk about the importance of generating revenue necessary to provide the services relied on by Nevada's families. And for NSCA, we often talk about the importance of funding public education. In February, hundreds of educators in red scarves and face coverings convened in Carson City, lining the street from the Legislative Building to the Capitol, asking you to dig deep to address our budget challenges. After sustaining difficult cuts in the 31st special session last summer, K-12 public education is again threatened this session with difficult general fund cuts. This includes a proposed $33 million cut to the Read by Grade 3 program, which provides critical early literacy supports, and $156 million and proposed cuts to class size reduction, despite already having the largest class sizes in the country. Emergency assistance from the American Rescue Plan will certainly help schools address pandemic-related issues and is greatly appreciated, but these funds are one-time and will expire in 2023. Ranking near the bottom of states in per-pupil funding, Nevada's public schools and other vital services deserve new state revenue, not just continued austerity. NSCA believes AJR 1 passed in the 32nd special session would be a strong start. AJR 1 would generate $485 million in new revenue for Nevada annually. SB 346, meanwhile, to establish parity for digital versions of products subject to sales tax, is still alive over in the Senate. As the emerging economy increasingly moves to digital format, SB 346 would close a loophole in the collection of sales tax, which is only applied to the purchase of physical products. Together, AJR 1 and SB 346 would make a strong revenue package to move Nevada on the correct course to address our chronic revenue shortfalls. Educators have been calling on our leaders to invest in Nevada for years, and now is the time to take bold steps to meet our state's needs. We need our leaders to have the courage to stand up and demand new and progressive revenue to move Nevada up from the bottom of the education funding lists. We believe our legislature and this committee has the opportunity now to advance a package of revenue proposals to take this big and bold step in addressing our funding challenge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So committee, a bit of the lay of the land. As you know, the priority is going to be getting bills out of the House. So please just pay attention for our agendas coming out. There will not be a meeting on this coming Tuesday. Thank you for your attention today. Thank you very much, excuse me, to our staff. Because I'm starting to cough now. I'm not going to list everyone, but thank you very much. Very much appreciated, and we are adjourned.